Hi, Commissioner Story. This is Brian Bowen.
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling.
So that we have the full commission here today.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. We're going to call the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Commission meeting Wednesday, November 28th, to order with all five commissioners in present. It is 4:10. The first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which you've been provided beforehand and also have a copy before you. Can I get a motion?
Motion to pass.
I'll make a motion. I've previously reviewed those minutes. I would move that we accept the minutes as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, our next item is an update from ABC Enforcement. Thank you for coming today.
Yes, ma'am. Is on?
Yeah, you got it.
Test, test. It's on the back. Right here. Afternoon. How are y'all? So I'm gonna give you a real broad, little bit of a vague overview of kind of what we're doing. Can't get into a lot of detail for obvious reasons, but we initially got 15 complaints. Most of those were from attorneys that various people had hired to file a complaint. I think a couple were from private citizens. We do anticipate more complaints coming. I have an agent working full-time on all the complaints. We've pulled him off of any other duties he has, and he's working full-time, working through the complaints. We sent 5 letters out already. Part of the problem with some of these is they're asking us to look into something that's subjective. They might be saying, well, I don't like the way Commissioner X graded. That's nothing we can really do about that. The grading was pretty subjective, and you guys graded how you graded. We do anticipate more letters going out. We got to the point where we're going to send letters to people saying this is just not something we can investigate. I expect 4 or 5 of those letters to go out this week, and I anticipate some violation reports, administrative violation reports going out in the next 10 to 14 days.
Can you define administration violation reports?
Just it's like we would do an alcohol violation. It's someone might have violated the medical marijuana rules and regulations as they were written and so forth.
It would seem like closing that out so so the whole process can go forward is the main thing. I mean, you can drag out, and obviously there are people with vested interest to drag it out, but the interest of the people of the state of Arkansas is for this thing to go forward. So it seems like the sooner that can be wrapped up, and you can assure people because the same thing will happen with the next, whether it's dispensaries, cultivators, doesn't matter. You can tie this thing up in courts forever, but that's not in the interest of the people. So it seems like the sooner that can be done,
Well,
the better.
We are working at a pretty good pace. We're getting big chunks of it knocked out. What I'm telling my agents and special agents is we can do it quickly or we can do it right. It's more important to us that we get it done correctly than it is we get
Correct.
it done fast. But we are in the process of moving through it pretty quick.
I agree, it's important that we get it right. Do you know if any of these violations will impact the 5 high scores for the cultivation, who have the cultivation license
I
currently?
would rather not get into the exactly who the violations are against until they should probably get the violations from us first before they hear about it. So I can't get real specific on which particular people are getting the violations.
So will we as a commission see get the violations before they're sent out?
The violation, I can make you aware of them.
Please,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
The violations will go to the ABC director, and I think they go to
Okay.
the ABC board.
Okay, that's great, okay.
But I'll get,
Can we-
I'll make you aware of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for coming.
Anything, give me a call.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is the update from the Arkansas Department of Health.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Shue, and I'm General Counsel for the Department of Health, and we're here to provide some information that's been requested of us to give you an update on where we stand. Can you check?
Can you make sure your mic
There it
is,
is.
yeah. It's up
gotta be
instead of
up.
down.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? I'm Laura Shue, I'm General Counsel for the Department of Health. And we've been asked here to give you an update on where we stand as far as our roles and responsibilities. As you all know, Amendment 98 required us to promulgate rules. Those rules were promulgated in 2017, gave us the responsibility of issuing registry identification cards for qualifying patients and for labeling and testing standards. We're actively working on approving registry identification cards, and we have weekly reports that are distributed to our office. As far as the supply and the demand of the cards, the latest numbers that we have received 6,732 applications. 6,457 have been approved. 0 applications have been denied at this point, but there are 269 incomplete applications that have been received. We also have a number of approved caregivers, and that number is 64. With our statistics of the approved cards that we have so far, 51% are male and 49% are female, 88% are Caucasian, and 8% are African American, and 4% are other. We do have statistics on the number of folks that we have at different ages. If you all would like further information, we'd be happy to provide that for you. As far as the qualifying conditions at this point, 31% of the patients often have more than one condition, but 31% have intractable pain or unresponsive to medicines, treatment, or surgery, and 16% have severe arthritis, 10% suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's my understanding that you all also were wanting to know about petitions for additional medical conditions. So far, we have had one petition for a new condition submitted back in April, or excuse me, it was received back in February. We had a public comment period in April. It was for bipolar disorder, and that petition was denied. And all that information is provided on our website as far as the information that was provided from the applicant. Also, the public comments are also on our website. We also have another application for an additional condition, and it was incomplete, so that is pending at this time. And I believe you also may have had some questions about our role as far as transportation to and from the cultivation facilities or dispensaries to the labs. At this point, we have not been promulgating rules with regard to transportation because we don't have that authority, but we are happy to work with the agencies that do. That would conclude my opening presentation. I also have Connie Melton here. She is our branch chief, and she's our expert, so she can help with any specific questions that you have.
From the patient standpoint, I mean, obviously, they need more than 6,000 patients, or they're going to have to use a lot of marijuana. But some of the obviously, I have patients ask me about it, but since there's none available in the market, if they're putting their money out there, are you guys, Are you gonna make them repay that, or are you gonna hold that and start the clock when the stuff actually hits the market? Because, you know, there's no reason for someone to pay this fee when it may not be in the market for,
Right.
you know, what happens with the litigation, it may not be in the market ever, but.
The cards have not been issued. They've been approved, but not issued. And everyone that was approved received a letter that said they'll receive their card about 30 days prior to medical marijuana being available in Arkansas. And
Okay.
we will, when the card is issued, that'll be the start date. And so their expiration date will be calculated from the start date of that card.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so it's all in the patient's best interest.
Yep, all right, good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So next, we're gonna get an update from our cultivators, and we're going to start, our first one is Osage.
Before we start, at the end of the last meeting, we talked about getting some updates on what was in the application for timelines and.
Right, to
Yes.
see if they're operational or
Yeah.
not.
Do we have those timeline information?
We don't, I'm sorry, we don't have them available at this time. I think you can probably ask the applicants.
Okay.
So, and I apologize for that.
You just wanted a blanket question with every one of them. What'd you put in your application? How many days you'd be up and operational?
Well, just making sure that we were on the timeline that we set as far as the rules and regulations.
Okay,
Remember, everything got to follow those rules
right.
and regulations.
Matt Truelove.
Matt, try the other one.
Matt Truelove with Osage Creek Cultivation. There it is, got it. Matt Truelove with Osage Creek Cultivation here to answer any questions you might have.
How far along are you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you just tell us about your cultivation facilities, where you are?
So we are doing a pre-engineered metal building, and the pre-engineered metal building is complete. We are started on interior framing of the walls. Once those walls are complete, we'll be starting with fertigation, overhead plumbing, electrical, and the HVAC system at that time. But we are in the dry. All the walls are sheeted, the roof's on and complete, and beginning all the interior work.
So based on the time line that you put in your application, can you go through that and tell us where you are based on, and you can take into account the whole period that we have?
So we feel like we're gonna be done with construction around March 1st. And then we are anticipating a 90-day cycle from the approval process before medicine will be available from when we're completed. So that would be a June 1st delivery date.
So you're talking about end of June, to be ready to deliver?
Essentially, it'll be in June from if we get the approval on March 1st, and that's when we feel like the facility will be complete.
So hopefully you got distributors up to,
Yes.
dispensaries up by then to, you have product on the, you know, you got product but no place to go. And
Correct.
if we don't.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like you guys are on time. I mean, I think that's, I mean, the main thing is obviously once you guys in place before the dispensaries are open, and if hopefully this process goes forward, then hopefully that time's out about right.
Well, and we've, a lot of the equipment has long lead times and everything, and we've been placing those orders, trying to time that. We don't want to buy that stuff and have it installed and setting for a long period of time. But we do have everything ordered now and have those deliveries coming. And that's kind of what our March 1st completion date is based off of, just some of that specialty equipment that had to be ordered. So, but right now with the delivery dates that we've been given and the startup times, commissioning times, March 1st is when we feel like we will be complete with the
Okay.
construction.
In your application, I mean, and you may not remember this, but in your application, you put, everybody did, put down a timeline when you think that you'd be fully operational. Do you remember what time frame that was?
No. But essentially a 90-day growth cycle. Frankly, my piece of this is more of the construction.
I understand.
But we had a vegetative state and then essentially 60 days in flower before it would be done. But after 90 days is when the product will be available. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you look at planting seed, like March 2nd, you guys are starting to grow.
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
If they're approved,
If
if they're, yeah.
provided no many other obstacles, but hopefully that's not going to be the case.
You had a question?
Back to your application, what was your timeline on construction?
They're talking in the application.
In the application process, you gave us a timeline of how long it would take you to construct your facility.
I believe we anticipated 6 months is what we anticipated, 6 to 8 months. And that, I mean, I feel like we're on schedule for what our anticipations. We've had somewhat of a wet fall, but now that we're in the dry, Mother Nature doesn't play as much of a factor at that point. And so as far as being able to complete, we feel confident about that.
So in looking at your application, which I think I've found now, originally you had the permits being issued in November of 17, and you were expecting to be basically done with the facility in March of 18. Now we had some, as far as when all of that, everything that happened, obviously that pushed us down quite a bit, but basically you had 6-7 months of construction time, and you feel like you'll still be able to hit that same period of time based on when the licenses were issued.
Yes, I believe so. Frankly, we held off on ordering some specialty equipment for a while there was so much litigation, because some of those have large non-refundable deposits, and while we were, it's a large sum of money, and so while we were kind of in that process of waiting, but once we've got far enough along and ordered the equipment, that's essentially all we're going to be waiting on, is just from the day we receive that equipment and then the commissioning time from that. So that's what our finish date's going to be based off of at this point.
Still hitting it pretty close. I mean,
Yes, sir.
that's-
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's commendable.
Yeah,
You know.
it is
Thank you.
commendable. Thank you. The community really wants to know kind of where everyone is. They think we're the commission holding it. So now, June 1st sounds like July 1st probably, right?
Well, I mean, if you have the month of March, the month of April, May, from the 90 days, it would be the beginning of June.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and provide this information.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
No, well, I hope anything I ever build anything, it's always over budget and takes longer, but you guys sound like y'all are doing pretty good. Thank you. It's
Thank you.
commendable.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yes. The next cultivation is Bold Group. Good afternoon.
Hello, how's everyone? Nice to meet you all, finally, for the first time.
Oh, wow.
My name's Danny Brown. I'm a CEO and an owner in Bold Team. Casey Castleberry, he's our attorney. In this day and age, we don't think we'll need him, but we never go anywhere without him, it seems like. To give you a specific timeline, which I think that's what you want, our license indicated about 5 to 5.5 months for construction. And we were issued a license July 10th, and we started moving dirt on July 12th. So 5.5 to 6 months or so from July is somewhere mid to late December. And at this point in time, we anticipate asking ABC to do a final inspection on our building the week of Christmas. So,
Wow.
Wow.
and then we had put in also a timeline on page 8 of our application shows a minimum of 104 to 121 days of plant growth. That includes propagation, veg time, flower time, and then cure time. So if we do the math on that, that puts us somewhere in April as an estimate to have medical marijuana available. We're doing a hybrid greenhouse. We're located in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, and I was there this morning. Our building is totally erected as far as the walls and the roof and the structure and everything. We were hanging HVAC equipment this morning. The plumbing is mostly done, and we're doing ceiling grids and just doing some cleanup, so it's doing really well.
That's awesome. I think are you gonna wait to plant, or because you're gonna end up storing inventory, I guess, if the dispensaries aren't up and going. You guys anticipated, it's hard to anticipate given everything that goes on, but you guys could probably be growing before there's a place to sell it.
So we've been in touch with several of the dispensary applicants, and to get timelines from those, we don't know who's gonna win until later on this month, but, some have indicated that they can be up and going in 60 days. So, because they mainly just have storefronts,
Yeah,
unless they're growing, they're just a storefront. So if that happens in December, as it's currently planned with your next meeting, then hopefully in February or March, some of those will be open. So that's in line with when we'll have it. But we do have a vault in accordance with ABC 6.3 that will hold the medicine until the dispensaries are open.
Great job. That's great.
Any questions?
How many strains do you anticipate when you start growing? And I failed to ask this question in the first group, but how many strains do you anticipate growing starting?
Our application called for 13 total strains. I can pull up the application and give you the specifics if you need it, but about
Yeah.
13. And we're gonna make sure that we have strains that are, for every element that's, part of the amendment.
You heard the update from the Arkansas Department of Health on the applications and the reasons for the applications. Will that change what you
Well,
grow?
actually, I really wanted to hear it, but I couldn't. Sitting in the back of the room, the ABC or DOH, neither one I could hear very good. So the facts that they presented, I would love to have that information. Did they say it's on their website? Like the percentage that each
The statistics are, and I will follow up and get.
Okay, that would be great information to have.
They issued 6,000,
Yeah.
6,400.
Yeah, we knew the number count, but when the lady was listing that 31% were
Chronic
for.
pain. 31% was for chronic pain, 16% was for post-traumatic stress disorder. Another 30% was
Osteoarthritis.
which was pain, arthritis.
Is that breakdown available on their
Yeah.
website?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, so 16% is for arthritis, which is sort of chronic pain. And then they had a petition for bipolar that was denied.
I would make
I'm-
one comment about the way that we constructed our facility, is that I know that we're supposed to meet the demand that's out there. We don't really know what that's gonna be. No one does at this point. We can only go by historical demand in other places that we've looked at. But we built our facility in a way that it's modular. And so adding additional grow area, we can do very quickly if that becomes necessary.
The reason it's so important that the cultivators know what's happening with the health department and is because this is medical marijuana. And if they're telling you this is what the people are looking for, your THC to CBD combination has to be right and your strain has to be right. And so it's okay to grow 13 strains, and that's important, but if we look at the chronic diseases in the state that they're applying for these applications, and we don't have enough of what they're using it for. So this is good information. It would be for me if I was a business person looking at that.
Yes, it's
Because
excellent.
you're going to see where you need to go initially based on what the Arkansas Department of Health is telling you that the need is for these communities.
Absolutely.
I was surprised not to hear more about seizure disorders, and I don't think they reported on any of those. It's a very common,
Probably very,
yeah.
But I do think it's important that they listed the top three, that all of them are covered, and that's the reason for my question, is that you have a patient that comes in for a seizure disorder, and if you do not have a high CBD content strain, then you may have a child that goes without their therapy.
Yes,
We specifically have several high CBD strains.
yeah. And that's why I was surprised at the data that we didn't get any applications yet for that. But thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Natural state, wellness,
Natural state wellness.
wellness can go first.
other two.
Yeah.
Natural state.
Yeah. We just,
Popular name, natural.
Hello, I'm Warren Ross. I'm a manager in Natural State Wellness Enterprises. This is Paul Nowak. He's an owner as well as founder in Harvest, which we're going to be operating our facility. As far as the update on construction, we have mobilized and commenced work on site. We're anticipating that we'll be complete with construction in Q2. And then I will we're going to be doing a phased-in approach so that we can make sure that we meet market demand, and I'll let Paul start talking about how we're going to be phasing that in, as he has a lot of experience with deployment of our facilities in other states and how we do that phased-in approach so that we meet market requirements.
So when you say construction, you mean second quarter 2019?
Yes.
So you're talking construction being done April, May-ish, and then you're gonna,
Yeah.
then your growth cycle.
But we'll be phasing in. We'll have security segregation on site so that we can start phasing in the propagation process, so that then, as we're concurrently completing construction, we're actually moving into vegetation.
Right, so the plan is to, and this is what we've done elsewhere, is to watch the progress of the dispensaries and demand, obviously. And if it's necessary to start quicker to get plants in the ground so that it is available after that cycle, and our cycle is 110 to 120 days, we would do a phased delivery of the certificates of occupancy, working with Warren's team, so that we could get those specific areas, the propagation areas and the vegetative rooms online and populated before actual construction is 100% complete.
Have you guys broken ground yet?
Yes.
Okay.
But you're still looking at, you're talking about just trying to grow just a small portion while you're still constructing the rest of your facility? Is that?
So, sort of. So the process is propagation and building up that plant stock, vegetative growth. While that propagation, those areas would be complete, and we would occupy those. They would be completely segregated from any other activities that were going on. It would basically be the flower rooms that would be constructed to move that timeline out. So
Confident you
the
can
flowers-
maintain security while you're
Absolutely.
growing it?
Yeah. And this is what we've done in the past to expedite delivery. And I think it's important to note too, one of our more recent experiences has been exactly the opposite problem, where we delivered the project, we populated it 100%, and we grew, started turning our harvest over. You know, we harvest on a five-day perpetual cycle, and we immediately built up a back stock so significant that we had to lay off half of the staff and shut down half of the building. So obviously, we're trying to marry up the right, meeting the demand.
Do you have walls? I mean, do you have anything up?
No, we just broke ground.
In your application, what was your time to complete construction?
249 days.
So you're not on track?
According to, from the time of June 21st, there was some additional clarification where we had to work with the commission on our particular site. I think that's been worked out, so we can now commence, that's what's enabled us to proceed with construction on site. So the greenhouse has been ordered and is scheduled for delivery in late January. And then we'll be working to get construction complete, like I said, in Q2.
When you talk about propagation happening kind of concurrently, what kind of volume are you thinking you're going to be able to propagate, even though you're not totally in the facility?
So when we talk about the not being completely in the facility, even if the facility was 100% completely built out before we moved first, either the source to start those plants, before that moved in, we wouldn't be occupying that complete facility until completion of the first round, which would be 12 weeks. So what we're proposing to do, if the demand is there and it becomes necessary, is to just open up the areas for the early growth of the plants and move the plants into there and start doing that while we're finishing out the flower areas, which wouldn't be populated anyway until probably 6 to 8 weeks past the original plants starting.
We're designing the facility that we can actually meet the entire demand of the license holders that are in their entirety, the number of license holders that are out there right now. And so we probably will not even fill our entire vegetated floor at the beginning because the number of license holders is not sufficient for the amount of size that we're
I
actually
think the license holder, I mean, I'm just speaking from the medical standpoint, being in pain management, I'm not certifying any patients because like I said, a patient's going to pay money or whatever, and if there's no product out there. So I think there's a holdback, I think, from a lot of doctors that I've talked to that, I mean, we're not going to sit there and have a discussion with a patient when there's nothing available, So hopefully 6,000 is not going to get it, it's not going to support an industry. But hopefully that picks up, but the confidence of, my patients come first in everything I do, so I'm not gonna, send money to the health department or whatever when there's no product. So hopefully that does pick up. But some of that is based on when you guys, everything gets up and going, there's actually product available, and obviously all the politics and stuff that goes on with this. But hopefully I think those numbers will go up.
Now, fortunately, we have a lot of experience in some other states where we see that ramp-up period, and so we'll be able to map our vegetation filling in the floor with those historical cycles.
And obviously, the intent here would be to stay close with the commission, and as this continues to expand and the patient numbers increase, so that we can be ahead of that and meet that demand.
There's a lot of patients asking, a lot.
Sure.
Cancer patients, and it would be ideal for them, particularly sooner the better for a lot of the cancer patients. And they don't have the kind of time, they don't have the luxury of time, so.
So when exactly do you think that, you say second quarter, when do you think exactly you'll be up and operational? I mean, you talk about
That question is product leaving the facility?
Growing. When do you think that you'll be growing? Do you think, I'm not gonna hold you to this, but, are you thinking March, or are you thinking June?
We're targeting April to start.
Okay.
And you mentioned a phase-in period. How many strains do you anticipate starting with in your phase-in period?
Yeah, so we would be in the neighborhood of 25 strains ideally to start with. And again, working with the commission, whatever feedback feedback that we could get on those underlying conditions to help us make those decisions would be, understanding more information would be better.
But that will be interesting because the medical data is all over the place, and,
Right.
and obviously there's a lot of marketing involved, but, the best studies will be when you have patients with bone mets, or they have, it's an amputee with phantom limb, these kind of things, and figuring out, to me, the feedback I'll get is when I have an amputee who tries the marijuana, or I have a cancer patient, and I get the feedback that says, yeah, because I'm going to learn from them, because all the data out there is really not reliable.
Right.
And if there's opportunity to do, if you get a good medical thing going, you start getting more scientific about what helps for what specific condition. You get into the chronic pain world, you get into your traumatic brain injury, you've got chronic migraines, you've got cancer, you've got bone mets versus spinal cord injury, et cetera. So, it'll be interesting to see what strains are actually effective. And the learning curve will actually come, from my standpoint, from the patients, because you can read conflicting stuff, and I've read it all, it's.
Sure.
But I think hopefully it'll be of benefit to the patients.
At what point do you see, and maybe the right answer to this is, do y'all have an approximation of, based on how many cards that are issued when you get to the decision of actually starting the growth cycle? Let's say that's April time frame. How many cards versus how much capacity you're actually going to use? In other words, like right now, if there's, I think they said 7,000 patients, does that mean that you would be at a 10% capacity, a 50% capacity? How do y'all see that shaking out?
We would probably start in the 50% range, just to have the varieties, and at some point, growing a very small amount, there's a loss of efficiencies by doing that. So we would probably start with half capacity if the numbers were around where they are right now.
And how many plants do you foresee being able to grow in your space, size-wise?
So I haven't added this up in a little while. Give me just a second. There will be, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000, I believe.
And that's at 50% capacity?
That would be at 100%.
That would be at 100.
Yes. Sorry if I misspoke.
So I just want to get this straight. So you will have final product basically a year from we implement it.
It would be if my math is right, in the July timeframe.
Okay.
Thank you,
As
guys.
far as-
Oh, you have another?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to thank them. If you have another question there still.
My only other question is, as far as the products that you're envisioning delivering, what do you think you're going to be able to start with as far as final products? Whether that's everything from just the buds to, do you see what else are you planning on starting with at this point?
So I would have to go back to the application. I can get you that answer. But we, as a company in this facility, is prepared to produce infused products and oil products, concentrates, tinctures, as well as flour.
And you don't see that changing based on demand, or do you see that changing based on demand?
I do not see it changing based on demand. In our experience in multiple states, where products, more like traditional nutraceutical products, when those are available, there's demand for those. When there are edibles are available, there's demand for that, oil products, and then flour, of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Natural state, municipal?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
The other one, I think, works a little better.
That works. Gosh. So, well, thank you for asking us to come in. We appreciate the opportunity. And as the other group said earlier, it's my first time to actually come to the meeting, but I watch them on time, so I guess I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller. But, what I wasn't really sure, but I had the opportunity to hear the other people speak, is kind of go through maybe the market, where we are, what the demand looks like, what the supply looks like, and our timeline versus what was in our application. So I guess the most important thing first is everybody wants to see tangible evidence of where we are in the process. And so I've got a picture that was taken. Joe Courtright, Courtright. And I'm the chairman and the CEO of the company. My background is I'm a pharmacist, but more of an old drugstore guy. So I'm the businessman in the operation. I'm not the grow specialist, I'm the scientist. So, and they remind me that all the time. So, as you can see, our location there, it's located on I-5.
Like yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're located in Jefferson County. You know, we originally, I think, put all the pictures in of that. We designed our facility for 3 phases. This is phase 1. Phase 2 is kind of the mirror image of that. That's why it slopes up, and next phase goes down. Phase 3 is more greenhouse, and I'll be totally honest, that's more of a way down the road if in the event recreational becomes legal. So, you know, one thing that in the discussion that's came out is a lot has changed since these things were designed 2 years ago. Like when you were asking about what strains, we picked, we have 15 strains that were spread across the board to treat the medical conditions, qualified conditions for the state of Arkansas. The thing that's going to change though is new conditions will probably be added, and more importantly, if more advanced strains are coming along. In an emerging industry like this, you know, a 2-year-old plant is an old plant. These things are, you know, we're finding that out on equipment, distillation equipment, extraction equipment. You know, the processes used 2 years ago are becoming kind of obsolete. There's more safe things out there. There's more things that are more accurate, more pure for medical grade products. So I'll go ahead and move on and talk about demand. And I've probably overanalyzed this more than anybody. I'm a numbers guy. And so we went back and when we were initially making our model, we looked at other states that had similar qualifying conditions. And Arizona was the one that stuck out more to us. And the good thing about Arizona, the law was passed in 2010, so you can see, you know, how the cardholder growth continues to grow. And so we extrapolated our model to kind of mimic what they were doing. And what you'll see is, one thing is, I never thought I'd say this, but the litigation and the temporary restraining orders hurt in a lot of ways, but it actually helped in one way because people kept getting signed up and getting their cards. So we're starting out with a much greater demand than any of us expected because the process took long. And so initially we thought we'd open up at 0.35% or about 10,700 cardholders. You know, we're 6,000 now, but that's going to take off. I think we'll be at 12,000 very easily. by the time we go to market, and I think we'll be at 18,000 by the end of that year. So, you know, we started out 50% of the growth. You know, and the other thing, there's going to be a big uptick in enrollment. We all know that. We're looking out there. You know, if you look at it every week, it's 40 people. You know, it was 240 people a week. We're 200 new people a week when this first announced. And if you look at that rolling average over the first 18 weeks, it was 144 patients a week. But I think it's going to be a lot more than that once we, you know, get dispensaries announced, get product out there. And so we modeled it we extrapolated it out from what the growth is now, and then added that additional bump in there. So, and the other thing, the market's going to continue to grow. It's still growing in Arizona, even though it's a mature market. You know, the Pew Foundation did a survey last month and found out 62% of people are now in support of medical marijuana. And so what's happening is, you know, it's more socially acceptable. You know, nobody thought the state as red as Oklahoma would ever pass the law they passed. So the times have certainly changed. So, so that's enough about demand. I'll talk about supply side. And everybody knows the day the first dispensaries are open, there's going to be a supply issue. Because there's been one in every state that has a new industry like this. And so that shouldn't be a shock. You know, the whole country of Canada has a shortage right now. The question is how long is that going to last? And, you know, what I'd like to do is kind of try to reassure you on that. Okay, this shows the excerpt from Schedule 2A of our application, where we talked about we'd be yielding 17,280 pounds of medical cannabis per year. And if you look down below that, I've been saying we're now anticipated producing 17.4 in year one and increasing to 21.6 in year two. Part of that is, you know, the change in technology and design. We've shaved a little bit off our grow time, and we've increased our yield pretty good through some new procedures. Initially, we said we would look at going to our phase 2 in year 5. That may actually be year 4 now, based on what the demand looks like. Okay. Let's see. Also, on the supply side, one other thing too is, you know, you're going to get that initial bump right at the beginning when basically you're stocking the store and people are stocking their medicine cabinets. So, you know, and this is a really high number, but we budgeted it the first month, the average person will be buying 4 ounces. Now legally you buy 5, but 4 ounces is a lot. And, you know, then it's going to taper down from there. If you compare that to other states, it's in line. It'll go from 4 down to below 2. Okay, last thing is I want to talk a little bit about our timeline. I didn't want to pass these out all together so everybody would look at through them. If you look at this, the blue side, it's really busy. That's slide 3. And this is the original timeline that we put in our application that has 2 phases. It has a 5/11 initial phase and then a 6/12 full harvest phase. And if you look at this page, just kind of breaks it down. I think gives you what you're wanting to know. And if you see, the original date that we predicted that licenses would be announced was 10/19/70, which was very aggressive because that gave you guys 30 days to grade, which obviously that wasn't going to happen. So you add 132 days on that, so that kind of steps up to that 10/22/18 date. And then that's when they announces the licenses were awarded. Then it was 134 days from litigation that puts us to 3/5. And then lastly, I've got 26 days, and that's 26 days of rain that's over the average rainfall for the state. You know, it rains here a lot in September and October. It usually didn't rain as much as it did in August. And so that kind of puts us where we're at, and I think You know, we have a plan as well, as the last gentleman talked about bringing in, we have a 3-room quadrant within our building where we'll start plants out. You know, it'll be secure, it'll have to be inspected and secured, meet all the requirements. And if we can get in there, maybe 45 days in advance, we ought to hit them this date, so.
So you think you'll have product available in April of 19? Is that?
Yes, sir.
And thank you for the handouts, they're very helpful.
Any questions?
We have just one. I know you said you weren't the expert on the strains, but I think you'll have one question.
Yep. So you mentioned that your data is 2 years old and you were going to grow 15 strains, but in the handouts you say that, I guess referring back, so how many strains are you going to start out with? Because you referenced that in your Schedule 2A.
Right, yeah, it's 15, but there may be a point where we change them just because there's a more pure strain that replaces the condition we were trying to treat.
But you're planning to roll out strains that treat the qualifying conditions as listed in the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delta Medical? Just don't touch the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the commission. My name's Don Parker, and I am the president of Delta Medical Cannabis Company. And with me today are CEO Doug Falls to my left and one of our counsel, Eric Gribble. I also have an audience I'd like to take a moment to recognize, and there are some other members of Delta Medical that are present today. Would you all stand? From your left to right is Ray Osmond, Tracy Johnson, Amy Fulkerson, and Jackie Fox. Thank you all. I want to begin by thanking the commission for the hard work you've all done the last couple of years after the people of Arkansas adopted Amendment 98. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I have some prepared remarks that I'd like to deliver to you all. To start with, we think it'd be helpful to this commission to understand a timeline from our perspective of the events that have occurred and what we were doing in accordance with our timeline that we had in our application. So prior to announcing the winners of the cultivation licenses on February 27th, we had researched and interviewed several architects, engineers, and contractors looking for the right fit to design a state-of-the-art cultivation facility. We also continued to research the various uses of extracted oils and identified several companies who may be able to assist us with manufacturing various medical marijuana products. When Delta Medical was selected to receive a cultivation license, we immediately completed our work on the surety bond, submitted the surety bond with our license fee to the DFA, and made immediate plans to travel to Colorado to meet with our consultants and complete the selection process of architect, engineers, and general contractor. In fact, when the first lawsuit was filed and the injunction was issued, we were in Colorado doing just that. At that particular time, we did pause in moving forward due to the issuance of the injunction and the allegations that were made in the lawsuits. However, after the initial round of hearings and intervention in the lawsuits by 4 of the 5 winners, And despite the continuing litigation and real threat that the licensing process would be thrown out and our license lost, Delta Medical decided to proceed with completing the architectural plans and the associated engineering design work, spending time and effort on our, spending time and money on our efforts without knowing the outcome of the litigation. Our facility design was completed, and when we were obtaining bids in order to be prepared to commence construction if the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled in our favor. The court's ruling became effective on July 9th, and our license was issued on July 10th. However, as this commission is aware, the Anderson protest letter was filed a couple of weeks later on July 25th, alleging that Delta Medical's location was within 1,000 feet of ASU Newport, and that ASU Newport should be considered a school under the commission's rules. As such, the Anderson protest letter alleged that Delta Medical was in violation of not only the Arkansas Constitution, but also the Federal Controlled Substances Act regarding sentencing enhancement for the manufacturing and selling of marijuana within 1,000 feet of a college or university. After discussing this letter with legal counsel and with Mr. John Connor Jr., who is our owner of our permitted location, we decided that in order to avoid another possible protracted legal fight that may well delay our construction and operation further, we believed it to be the prudent course to move our location down the road 1.5 miles to property near the Arkansas Department of Corrections, the Grimes Unit, also on land owned by Mr. Connor. There are no other businesses or residences near the prison, and we viewed that a move to that location would be a very easy fix to avoid possible further delays caused by the protracted legal action and legal maneuvering. Less than a week after receiving the Anderson protest letter, we contacted the ABC director 4 months ago on August the 1st to discuss the process to request a change of location. We understood that there was an application process being developed, and we could request a location change as soon as the application process was approved by this commission. Importantly, the ABC director instructed us not to make a request to change locations until the process in the application was developed, finalized, and approved by this commission, which is consistent with and required by the commission rules. Thus, we waited. In an effort to move forward as expeditiously as possible, our attorneys were in regular contact with ABC director to inquire about the status of the change in location procedure so that we could proceed with our request. The application process was finalized and approved by this commission on November 13th. However, the application form was not published and was not provided to us until Wednesday, November the 21st, the day before Thanksgiving. We completed the application and filed it on Monday, November the 26th, 5 days after receiving the application, which included a holiday and a weekend. Our application to change locations is on your agenda today. And we respectfully request that this commission take action and grant our request to move our location down the road 1.5 miles. This request is not a material change to our application and does not in any way change, modify, or alter Delta Medical's plan for operating a medical marijuana cultivation facility in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Additionally, we understand that there have been rumors floating around that there are other reasons for our request to move, such as a cheaper price for land. I can unequivocally state that that is not the case. As shown in the option to purchase filed with our application to change location, the cost of the land is identical to the price in the option to purchase that was filed with our original application. However, by moving locations, we are required to buy a minimum of 5 acres of land, whereas in the original option to purchase, we were required to buy a minimum of 2 acres of land. The option price for 5 acres is $217,800 versus $87,120 for 2 acres, or a difference of $130,680. We are willing to pay this additional sum and close immediately in order to avoid possible further delays and get our business up and running in order to supply medical marijuana to Arkansans who need it and are qualified. Now for our responses to your specific questions. What is the current status of construction and when will construction be completed? As soon as this commission makes a decision on our application to change locations, we are prepared to immediately move forward by closing on the property and commencing construction. All plans are completed, construction bids accepted, and we anticipate that the health department will approve our plans next week so that we can immediately obtain a building permit from the city of Newport. As a side note, we should have received that approval this week, but a key person at the health department who is required to sign off on our plans is on vacation. Our plans were filed with the health department on November 15th, and we understand that we were the second cultivator to file our construction plans with the health department for approval. Our plans were filed a week after the first cultivator filed, and as of this past Monday, we understand that only 3 cultivators have filed plans with the health department. If a decision is reached today on our application to change locations, weather permitting, we could be turning dirt as early as next week. Our contractor has estimated construction to take 5 months, given the time of year when construction commences, whereas we had originally planned 4 months or less, provided our construction had commenced in late summer. Our metal building has been ordered. Our HVAC systems have been ordered due to the lead times involved. I think that was referenced by one of the other cultivators who spoke earlier. To date, we have spent in excess of $900,000 for the building, and for the building and HVAC mechanical systems alone, we have committed an additional $3.5 million. Our original estimates on cost of construction have more than doubled, due primarily to the plumbing and mechanical systems being more extensive and expensive than originally estimated. However, given the financial strength of the owners of Delta Medical, we have the resources available to handle the increasing costs. As demonstrated above, we have moved forward notwithstanding our desire to move our facility 1.5 miles down the road. Another question, when will product be available? Depending on required approvals from ABC when construction of the facility is completed, we anticipate that product will be available 13 to 20 weeks after construction is completed. In our timeline, which is Exhibit 35 to our application, we had estimated from the start of framing to being open for business to be 27 weeks. So once we start, we will still be well within the time to get our facility up and running. Our best estimate to have product available after the construction is complete is July or August of 2019. How much medicine will Delta Medical be able to produce? As reflected in our application, we estimate that we will produce approximately 2,200 pounds of dried flower in the first year of production, which equates to over 35,000 ounces, or approximately 1 million grams. We initially anticipate that there will be a split of 70% flower and 30% of other products. However, the market will tell us what the proper mix will be, which in fact may be a 50-50 split or even less. We plan to offer various extracts-derived products, including vaporizer cartridges and pens, lotions and other topicals, tinctures and pills, and oils for cooking and infusing food products. We also plan to initially, although this is a little bit of a moving target, we anticipate we will initially start with approximately 15 strains, which will cover all of the medical conditions for qualifying patients in Arkansas. Although there are approximately 6,600 Arkansans who have registered for a medical marijuana card so far, we anticipate that there will be approximately 20,000 registered the first year and increasing thereafter. The data on usage per patient that we've been able to uncover in other states is all over the place. We think the Arkansas limit of 2.5 ounces for every 14 days for a qualified patient appears to be sufficient. Depending on the illness, many patients will only use 1 ounce or less, which is 30 grams or less, every 30 days. With our production estimates, Delta Medical anticipates that we will be able to supply in excess of 20% of the qualified Arkansans. We would certainly welcome any other questions you may have.
I know it's just a mile and a half down the road, but it's not changing counties, right? It doesn't, you're not leaving an economic zones. I mean, I know there's these borders, but you're in the same county, in the same, okay, just want to make sure.
That is correct. We are moving down the road 1.5 miles. It's the same landowner. It's just we're buying 5 acres instead of 2.
So then, one of the questions I have is, I feel your pain on all the hurdles you guys have had to jump over. There was a question of the definition of a school, a university. So if it turns out that, because I don't, I mean, these come to be lawyer questions, but I mean, if it turned out that a university is not, and you just handed us a definition of a school, you know, to me, the university is a school, but I guess it's going to come down to the legal part. But if the legal part says it's not a school, then they wouldn't even have to move. Is that? I mean, how did? I see two things in play here. I see you guys moving because there's a claim that the definition of a school is a university. But if they came back and said, well, we decided the definition is university, I mean, because that's going to be an illegal question. Then, if that's the case, then why do y'all even have to move?
Well,
I mean,
Dr. Rowan, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a legal opinion as to whether the university is a school under the commission's rules. And I think most everyone thinks that there will be an Attorney General's opinion issued that supports the definition that this commission has adopted, which would not include ASU Newport in the definition of school. However, that is a legal opinion, and that does not prevent legal challenges. And ultimately, it would be the Arkansas Supreme Court that would tell us whether or not the definition of a school would include college or university. And then looking forward and making sure we are able to supply Arkansans with medical marijuana. As this progresses, and we've talked a lot today, I've heard a lot of talk about how we anticipate, or we've seen in other states, the ramp up of patients. If the legislature were to legislatively change the definition of school to include university or college, then while our facility would be, quote, grandfathered in, we're not sure we would be able to expand to meet the needs of Arkansans with qualifying medical conditions.
Do you currently have a lease or own 7301 Victory Boulevard, Newport?
An option to purchase, which was filed with our original application.
So you put money down and so you have an option
Yes,
to
ma'am.
purchase. So will you lose funds on that?
Since it's the same landowner, he will transfer our funds from the one property to the other.
So I'm like Dr. Ramon, so depending on this decision by our Attorney General, depending on what the definition is, why would you move? I understand what you're saying, but do you need to move if they defined it as not being a school?
An opinion from the Attorney General is just that, an opinion. And what we're concerned with, that won't necessarily prevent future litigation. And if there's future litigation, like we saw after the license were issued, there may well be a judge that would file an injunction and either stop us in the middle of construction or shut us down pending a resolution of the lawsuit. We want to take as much risk off the table as we can and prevent any interruption in supplies.
I see your point. I mean, I think that's kind of ridiculous that you're in this position, to be honest, that we can't do anything about the definition of what the school's going to be, but I don't see moving 1.5 miles down the road. I don't see where that necessarily makes the difference from their application.
When do you think the AG's opinion is going to come out? Just ballpark.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sorry.
for putting me on.
Yeah.
So my understanding of the opinion is it's in its final phase of review, and we are anticipating an imminent release of the opinion. I'm hopeful within the next week, the opinion will be issued. And if I can address, just to clarify some of the things that the comments that you have made, he is correct in the fact that an Attorney General's opinion is an opinion. It doesn't necessarily carry the same weight as a judicial opinion would, but it is given deference when examined by courts typically. But a judge doesn't have to follow word for word what the Attorney General's opinion says. So I think that should be considered when you're all looking at their transfer application. I think that answered.
And it gives you guys clarity going forward. If you guys just move it down a mile and a half down the road, and I don't see why that's a big deal. I mean,
So I'm gonna ask that we move to table this until we get that opinion.
I'll make a motion for that and table until we get that opinion.
well, if they, just for the sake of discussion on it. I mean-
There's a motion on the table,
Oh,
so,
sorry.
and it's been second, so we can,
Now it's discussed.
now we can discuss it.
Okay. I just feel like there's two separate issues. We could do our part as a commission, just an opinion, that, allowing them to move a mile and a half down the road gives them clarity to go forward without further risk of that particular hindrance to them. I think I'd like to give you guys clarity on it and just let you guys make the move. I don't see where it's I don't think it is a material change in your application or your ability to pull this off. I prefer
Well,
to
here's
see-
my concern. Is that fair to the guys that are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? If we, they picked this location, they decided this location. Is it fair for us to say, okay, you can move, and then we have numbers 6 through whatever,
No, I see your point, and if it, to me, if it was I know, let's just for discussion. I mean, I just think this is what we're here to do.
And please,
mean,
no
let's-
public comments at this time.
I'm
We are
not-
very open to public comments, and we have them all the time, but please allow us to discuss this
I
openly.
mean,
Thank you.
if they were moving it, so from Jefferson County into Pulaski County, I'd be like, no way. We based our judgment on, to me, I mean, it was just me, but I based the judgment that they were in an economic zone that needed economic development. So moving it somewhere in Jefferson County is one thing. Moving it out of Jefferson County to Pulaski County, to me, is a huge difference. I mean, to me, it didn't matter to me.
Dr.
whether it was-
Lamont, one question.
Yes.
My concerns is our rules and regulations, and I've watched this process and been a part of this process, and I've looked at people's applications over licenses being denied because of different things, but the issue is
I
that
agree on that.
dental medical knew where they chose their location, when they chose their location. And that's, so we need to know what the definition is, and we need to wait on that. But, you can change everything if something's, we can argue different applications all the time over one small thing. But we have to be steadfast in following our own
I agree with that, and
rules.
I think
And,
some people have also been, I think, unfairly, some of the scrutiny. some of the
Yes,
other
it's been very
applicants,
tough,
I
and
think
so.
I have not
if we-
agreed with.
We
but-
have to follow our rules, and I think, first of all, we need to be clear in our own rules and wait on the opinion. And,
So if the opinion of the Attorney General comes back and says, because again, if they say it's not considered a school, then we move to grant them the move. If they say it is considered a school, then I see your point. Then it would have not, you know, they threw out applications for less, you know, driver's licenses or whatever that weren't turned in. So if it comes back, and I guess we just have to wait on the opinion, if it comes back and it's not considered a school, then granted the move doesn't matter. But if it is considered a school, then I see your.
If it's considered a school, then that application is disqualified. Well, no, that's incorrect, not necessarily, but it could mean something different.
I don't think it's that big a change, but I see your point on it, but that's why we discuss, and that's what we're here to do.
Madam Chairwoman, may I offer a couple of pieces of information to the commission? There are two things. One is your rules, specifically Rule 417, clearly provides for an option for a licensed cultivator to move locations. So it's in your rules. We're not asking for something that's not part of your rules. The second thing is this commission may be aware, there were 10 applicants for cultivation facilities that selected Newport, okay? There were 2 that were selected to receive licenses. 9 of the 10 applicants were all within 3,000 feet of ASU Newport. At the time we selected the location, we relied on a number of things, the least of which was the Director of Economic Development in Newport, John Chadwell, had a discussion with Scott Harden of DFA, and who concurred with their reading that ASU Newport is not a school under your rules and regulations. Also, ASU Newport went all the way to the Chancellor and the General Counsel. They had absolutely no objection to a cultivation facility being located next door, and we relied on that. It is unfortunate that when a protest letter like this is filed, depending on what happens, if the protest letter, nothing's done about it, then there's always the possibility of litigation. We simply want to take any chance of any further delays with the medical marijuana program in Arkansas, particularly as it relates to Delta Medical, or any other cultivator who's near ASU Newport, to prevent any further delays. And let's get on with about the business of growing medical marijuana.
You have any other comments?
Was the piece of land that you're proposing to move to available at the time of your original application?
I do not know. It was not on the table as a potential site. We didn't ask Mr. Connor specifically. In fact, it's been in farmland. And when this issue arose, we went to him, and he said, I do have another piece that I really didn't want to sell, but I understand your dilemma, and I would be certainly willing for you to move down the road 1.5 miles. It's obviously probably even better security in the area, given the fact it is literally across the road from the Grimes unit in Newport. But that's part of the reason he required us to buy 5 acres instead of 2 acres, because he is taking land out of production.
Commissioner Story, you have any comments or discussion?
My only thought is I think we ought to get the Attorney General's opinion first. I understand that any more delay is not necessarily what we want, but if Brian's sitting here thinking that we'll have the Attorney General's opinion potentially by the 19th when we've already got a meeting scheduled, we're not talking about a long delay, and I think that adds a lot of clarity, because I see both sides to it, and I think it informs the commission based on that opinion on where we ought to go. So I would personally be in favor of the motion.
If, let's say, the Attorney General rules that it's not a school. I know your guys' thing is you always have that threat of litigation going forward. Does that really, and what would you say then, Travis, again, for discussions mean, if so the Attorney General rules that it's not a school and that the application is sound, then do you allow them to move, or do you think that they have to stay where they initially said? I mean,
Well, I think it'd be a lot harder to say, well, first of all, I think we ought to see what the Attorney General says, because that is a lot of clarity. If the Attorney General is of the opinion that, we specifically exempted colleges from the definition of schools. And so I very much appreciate the reliance that everybody had that colleges were not schools, and everybody based opinions and, locations on that. If that's still the Attorney General's, if the Attorney General agrees with what we put inside our rules, then I think everybody's kind of made their choice on where they want to be, potentially. And that, that's kind of there's always a threat of litigation for anything. And so I think that's where we have to just kind of look at this. But I think in a vacuum, it's hard to say, let's do that, and especially if we think there's an Attorney General opinion coming out so soon. I would just try to bring this back up on the 19th and see where we are at that point.
Okay, so we'll call for a vote. All in favor for?
Aye.
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 for the sake of argument, I'll say nay. I just think that.
Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Carol, appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I do have one thing to address with the commission. As stated in the previous meetings, I will update you each meeting on where the consultant is on school range. Our meeting this week was moved to Monday because of the holiday. We did have a conversation with them, and they are still on track to be completed the week, around the week of the December the 7th, somewhere between the 7th and the 14th. I did address with them coming on December the 19th to address the commission, and they are available for that date. So if we can, please confirm the 19th at 4 o'clock.
Good with me.
I'll get my pension in.
So there's as far as your expiration of your term, my understanding is it may be at the end of the month. You potentially could be a carryover commissioner until a new person is appointed, and that goes for Dr. Carroll as well. Those appointees would come from the legislative body, and I don't know where they are, to be candid.
Probably hiding.
Yeah, on that subject, so.
When, the 19th is a Monday?
It's a Wednesday.
So, okay, Wednesdays. Okay. I have a chance on Wednesdays.
Is that okay? The 19th at 4 o'clock, is it the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
I will let PCG know. We have another call scheduled for this Friday for another update, so I will let them know then.
So I have nothing further.
Is it, my understanding then we'll discuss the AG's opinion then not until the 19th, is that correct?
So the request for transfer of location will be discussed after the,
We would bring that up as well after PCG, so, or if you'd like, we can discuss that first, depending on, it's really up to you all on who you would like to take first on that day.
Doesn't matter.
can I ask a question to Mary Robbins? So, can any facility move within any time frame? Like, as long as it's not out of a county, is there any rules? I'm just,
The only-
because,
The only rule is that they have to come to you, they have to make a transfer application.
Your rules permit a request, but, and then you set forth in the form that you approved, I believe at the last meeting, the information that you wanted to obtain from them.
because I guess I'm just wondering why, like, we're at this point and this school issue just came up. Because everything was, it's kind of like, an application gets all the way, that's a lot of money that, how do we get to this?
So-
I'm just wondering, I don't I guess I'm missing a point and would like clarification there.
So probably, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the licensees, but I can, from a legal standpoint, maybe explain kind of how we got here. You all defined what you saw as a school in the Medical Marijuana Commission rules. And you specifically excluded colleges and universities in your definition. So in their applications, they relied on what you all defined a school as. Our office received a request for an official opinion from a legislative member. And again, while an attorney general's opinion would not be the gospel truth, for lack of a better word, it would carry deference in a court. So I would imagine that some of the licensees are looking at the request for opinion to see where we come down. And that issue did not come up until after the licenses were awarded, and are being considered by our office based on the request from the legislative member.
But if it's vetted through ABC and they,
If our opinion changes what you all have defined, and our analysis is that it is actually a school, then that would put the licensees in a very hard spot, for lack of a better word.
Isn't that kind of on, I mean, that's how we define, I mean.
That's how you defined it.
That's
Right.
kind of where I see, I mean, if we define it that way, for better or for worse, I mean, this stuff is never gonna be perfect. I mean, but to
that's
penalize.
the first question, is
you know,
how do we get so far and this become a problem? Does someone file a complaint and then it had to be,
The process for an official opinion from the Attorney General's office has to come from a specific set of people. Legislators can request an official opinion, which is what occurred in this case.
Okay. That's-
Which occurred after the licenses were
Okay.
awarded.
that's what I wanted to know, how did this come up so late? Thank you. We're adjourned, thank you.